Sunday live with Constantin and Ashley. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Hi, Ashley. Happy Sunday.
Happy Sunday. Woo woo.
We have an interesting topic for today. I mean, we always do. We always
For
find
sure.
interesting things to talk about. Now, what excites me about what we're going to talk about right now is that my opinions and my perspective, let's say it's perspectives, not necessarily opinions, have shifted quite a bit on this topic in the last, I don't know, 6 months or so as I'm going on my own journey.
Hmm.
And the topic for today, as you see in the ticker below, are we co-creating at all times, or is it selective? Are we actually even part of the creation process? And I'll let you maybe answer the question from your perspective, just maybe a quick answer if you want, as I try to figure out why we're not live on Instagram yet here
Oh,
because it hasn't gone live. So I'll let you answer
I'll take
that.
over.
Yes,
Um,
thank you.
well, first of all, a little backstory is that Constantine presented this very deep topic to me approximately 3 minutes ago. So there we are at.
Hey, it's more like
Um,
five, let's be honest.
okay, 5 minutes, 5 minutes. Um, but ultimately, like when I think of that question, I also think of like a even different question regards a couple different questions is what the hell is the definition of co-creating, and then also is creation occurring now or has it already occurred? So I think like, and we've talked
Yes,
about that before. So to me, like when I'm thinking about this, like my vision of our ability to create is everything is within us, like it's that dream mentality, right? So when I dream about whatever last night, it was just a dream within my mind and I'm within God. So if we look at co-creating as like not ever being alone when you're creating, okay, yeah, we're co-creating. But when we see co-creation as like two of us with the same agenda as far as like creation of the world, creation of, what we see in this illusion, I think a lot of people think we co-create with God. And one of the things I loved you brought up before, Constantine, is like when things are good, it's our creation. When things are bad, it's God's creation and it's his like test for us or to make us stronger. But yet, like in my mind, if something can be one or the other, then it was never either. That's
yes,
like my biggest thing.
yes.
So if we can 1 minute co-create and the next minute not co-create, then I don't really think it's ever either, because I don't think we're actually creating. I think we're dreaming. And I think that illusionary projection is so much different. It is a creation, but I don't think it's the creation in the matter of what most people would say co-creation is. And I think that's why I started with like, what is it? Like, you got to understand what your
Exactly.
definition is first. We got to get on the same language.
And that's why I love where you went with it. I mean, I couldn't agree more with everything you said. And co-creation for me, the way I look at it, yeah, let's say we're in an illusion. Let's say we're in this world right now. Co-creation is everything that happens in our life. Do we have a say in it at the the spirit level? God, universe, whatever you want to call it. Do we have a part to play in it? Like, did I agree to have this conversation with you, Ashley, just because of my free will, or is there some bigger play at hand, right? Some bigger co-creation aspect of it. Because yes, you and I are co-creating this together right now, because I guess that's the definition of creating a live video, but we're also having all the people in the audience co-creating with us because they are getting their own insights and perspectives out of it,
Hmm.
right? And the reason I brought this topic up is I was interviewing a guest for my podcast a couple of days ago, and we had a beautiful conversation, and this idea of co-creation came up. But what we had a big difference was exactly what you mentioned, is this idea that for some reason, at times we believe that if we have the power to co-create, it's selective. So we're not always doing it, we're just sometimes doing it. And like you said, I'm with you 100%. If it's just sometimes, then it probably doesn't even exist.
Hmm.
or it's always, right? It's like either one or the other.
Mhm.
That's
Yeah.
kind of what I'm at.
Well, I just thought of another like clarifier. I mean, gosh, I think that's part of the issue today, to be honest with you, with a lot of these deeper philosophical, metaphysical conversations at like the level of marketing or the level of, like the coaching industry, the spiritual industry, is that we use these very lofty words and lofty terms, and we just, I don't even know if people assume that everybody has the same definition, or they assume people will get lost in it, right? Like, because nobody's sitting here truly defining, because when you were saying like you and I are co-creating this and the audience is co-creating with us, my mind would say, well, the way, like, who are we talking about? If you're talking about the persona of Constantine and the persona of Ashley and the persona of everybody in the audience, it would appear that way.
Mhm.
But we know the truth of the spirit we are, your highest self, whatever you call your guiding light within, soul, spirit, would say otherwise, would say, no, this has already all been written. We're just viewing it through the parable of Ashley, the parable of Constantine. So therefore, the co-creation isn't actively occurring, but has already occurred, and you're reviewing it from the end. So, like, I mean, but do you see what I'm saying? Like, it's like when we think of it, if you and I went on Instagram right now or went on the internet and just like Googled co-creation courses or co-creation
Or
coaching
manifestation.
or manifestation, whatever
Yeah.
it may be, like, it's going to just have a ton of this stuff, and no one is ever defining co-creation. And I don't think it's like consciously malicious, but I think the ego subconsciously is like, perfect, here's a word that feels super magical to people, but yet nobody really has ever sat and brought awareness to what that word actually means and what like all the facets of it are. So we can just blow their mind, and they'll give us any amount of money because it gives them this false sense of certainty, this false sense of hope.
Yeah, and it gave me a great idea here. Let's ask
Are you
ChatGPT.
Googling it? Oh,
No, I'm gonna
Oh
use
gosh, here we go.
ChatGPT. We're gonna go.
Chat like can never get my shit right, but whatever.
I know it's been a fascinating tool to explore certain philosophical topics. I mean, sometimes it doesn't want to go anywhere, but it's still interesting. Okay, so how would you define co-creation? Let's see. This is gonna be beautiful. I mean, he's getting very specific. Okay, so I mean, it's okay. I can understand that. So co-creation is a collaborative process where multiple stakeholders come together to jointly develop and create new values, solutions, or experiences. So that's what we're doing right now, right? Technically, like if you look at it from the form level, like where we are right now, that's what we're doing. We're getting multiple people together to bring new value or create new value, new solutions, new experiences to others, right?
Yeah. Yeah. But I think like for me, people think it's like an active occurrence in this very moment. And that's where I brought up like for me, I am working on unwinding the mind and no longer identifying with the parable of Ashley, with the persona of Ashley,
Yeah.
but instead the I am, right? Like Eckhart Tolle, all these people, if you're watching and you have dug into personal development or spirituality, all of your major gurus that sell you millions of dollars worth of stuff talk about this I am presence, but then they meet you at the ego and instead train your ego with the knowingness of the I am presence. So it's like, what? It's like, what was I saying? Oh, yesterday I did a video for the Kardashians, and it was about control and how control is to seek like safety and, a false sense of just like certainty and all this stuff. But that only exists in the ego, because control is really about using your past to predict the future and to maintain control, when in fact control doesn't actually exist when you are in the present moment, because it just is. So there's nothing to like compare to. But what I was like mind blown about is like people like the driving force right now is to find inner peace, right? What you say,
Yeah.
that like everybody's trying to find inner peace or find more time, or which is all leads back to the inner peace. You feel like if you had more time you would have inner peace, if you have more money you'd have more inner peace, whatever. So a big piece is like meditation and be here now. You know, the book, Be Here Now. I'm literally looking at my bookshelf, Be Here Now. We're attempting to utilize those to create control in our life. Like to manifest the house, the car, the money, all of these things. But the problem is one is coming from the spirit and one is coming from the ego belief system. You cannot put those together. Fear and love cannot coexist. So the entire time, what you've actually done is you've taken a very innate state, right? Like be here now, and you made a complicated ego diagram of how to try to get there in the ego. So at any moment it can be taken. But I think that the reason why I bring this up, it goes into like co-creation. Is like we've taken this thing where, yeah, co-creation at some point, you know, like deeper metaphysical levels, we are a thought in God's mind. So God created us, but we can create like God. So it would appear like we're co-creating because we are within God, and then our creations are within us, right? So there's multiple layers. And then we're like, hey, this is really cool. You can create. So now you have even more control over your life because you're creating it. And that it just like drives deeper, deeper, deeper into the ego, into the belief system of fear. Because to be honest, Constantine, what would be the only reason why we would care if co-creation actually exists or not? Is to seek control.
Yeah.
Right? That's why when I tell, if
Listen.
I were to go up to someone who's very much in a state of ego-driven spirituality, they've spiritualized the ego, and I was like, hey, co-creation doesn't exist, you can't manifest all these things, they would be pissed off. And the only reason why is because they are not using those things to be in the present moment and to truly find the now. They're using them to control the future at an even more spiritual level. That's spiritualizing the ego in my mind.
That's,
I don't know, I've gone off on a tangent.
That's powerful and deep. I mean, you got me thinking so much there, because obviously it contradicts some of my own beliefs, but at the same time, I'd be like, you're not wrong. So I'm like, wait a second, that means I have to do more introspection now when they said, yeah. So it's so beautiful coming up. And I mean, I don't know, I can't add much more because I can disagree with you. And at the same time, some of my beliefs are like, but wait a second, what do you mean? That means it's going to now take me down a different rabbit hole to try to figure this out. And that's, of course, coming from the ego level, because we know it all.
Yeah. Well, because think about it, Constantine, like, you know, I mean, you're an amazing coach at helping people really begin to find that inner peace, and you can start to find it, and you can find it while you're still living in the ego. You've experienced it, I've experienced it, but what leads us down this path, the path I'm on, I believe, is over time we see it's not consistent. We're like, wait, I've done everything and it should be so consistent, right? Like I go on journeys and I meditate and I do all the things that they say to do, but it still doesn't make sense. Like it's still not occurring as it should, right?
Yes.
And then you get to this back against the wall moment and you realize, like, there's got to be another way, and you start to open and expand. But I do think you have to go through those moments of really believing in very ego-driven concepts and believing that they're going to be your solver until they're not. Because otherwise it's always like the what ifs, and you can always see everybody with the shiny objects, right? And you're like, well, what if it is that way? What if instead, if I just had money, it would be different? What if instead I just had the perfect husband? It would be different. What if instead, you know, you go through all these what if insteads, even if it's not in this lifetime, it could have been past ones, and you're still carrying with you that deeper remembrance. But I feel like we really have to go through those. So the reason why I bring that up is because I think that's why I love our conversations so much, is because it's not about necessarily right or wrong. It's about the introspection, being open to it, and then being open to the discussion of a different way.
Yes. Absolutely. I love that point, Ash. And I would agree with you 100%. Every time we have a conversation, it allows me to challenge my own thought process and beliefs, Because like you said, with everything that happens in the ego, sometimes, I mean, you don't know what you don't know in this moment, and you need to be challenged at times, and that's what I'm seeing right now as well. And it's interesting because it puts into question for me right now in this very moment what comes up is like, what's the point of life then, right? Because I
Mm.
mean, I truly believe in purpose. There's a reason we came into this illusion for, right?
Mhm.
And I know we have different opinions on that, but then but then it begs the bigger question: what's the purpose here? I know, if I'm not mistaken, in the course of miracles that you talk about a lot, it's all about forgiveness, right?
Yeah, that's the only true purpose here is
Yeah.
forgiveness to so that we can find our one true desire, which is the will of God, the love of God, to remember that. But can I, because I think this is a conversation that you and I have always just kind of pussyfooted around in our friendship. I'll just be
Let's do it.
honest.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think what's happening is like level confusion. And so when I talk about level confusion, it's when, like, say, like when we're having these deeper metaphysical conversations, and one is really coming from a place of like the illusion, and the other's coming from really a place of the mind. So then when like you feel very strongly, which this was me like 2 years ago. So like and I feel, if anyone's watching this, Constantine and I have had some amazing, we prickle each other all the time, but I think the beauty is we love each other, so it's like a loving prickle, and we know it's always coming from love. But like you feel attacked because you have this like this yearning to help others, this yearning to 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 just walk with people on their journey, which I have my entire life. And it's not that I don't now, and I walk with people, and I'm a coach, and we do these YouTubes, and you and I are just constantly trying to give. But the level confusion is, A Course in Miracles talks about the only true purpose is forgiveness, but that's at the level of the mind. So when you talk about purpose at the level of form, it can look different, but everything can be used for forgiveness. So, like, you can feel called to be a coach and walk with other people's on their journey, but that's at the level of form. But when you use it at the level of the mind for forgiveness opportunities, when you're working with people, that's when both levels are meeting each other. But when you just
Yes.
only believe you're here to like save the world, means that you believe in the world, means you believe in the illusion, instead of I'm here to give, because in giving is receiving, and in teaching is learning. And truly, when let's say you and I work together, when we work together, uh Constantine is Ashley, Ashley is Constantine, because those are just personas, those are just parables for the spirit that's coming through and working. So like, someone may feel their purpose is to be a janitor here, right? Or feel that, or just feel called. But your true purpose is always forgiveness. And the way we know that, or the way I know that, is the ever changing rule again. Right? When you go through your life, your purpose will feel as though it changes when you are looking at the level of form. And it changes based on your growth and your development, right? Like you feel like, oh, I'm needed here, I'm needed there. That's a clear red flag that that's an ego level, that you're at the level of the ego in the illusion, because true purpose is never changing, is never altering, because true purpose comes from unconditional love, which is truth, which cannot be changed, which cannot be negotiated, which cannot be different from me to you. And that is the forgiveness. And I say it's not just forgiveness like the one word, but it's forgiving as well. So it's like, it's just, where are you placing your weight, right? Because if you place your weight on the purpose in the illusion, like say I place all my weight on that, I am not worthy unless I'm walking with others on their journey, or like have coaching clients, or have a million people watching my YouTube videos, or even 10, whatever. If I put any weight on that, at any moment that can be taken,
Yeah.
right? That can go away. And then I feel purposeless, right? And that's when people get into the suicide and the depression, because they feel purposeless, because the ego had control over that purpose, because it wasn't their deepest level purpose, their true purpose.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things come up there, actually, and thank you for going there. I mean, it's also, to me, like the last part you mentioned ties into identity, right? Because it could be
Yes.
your identity. Like, let's say, I figure out that my purpose is to make spaces look brighter, to light up the day of someone, and then I become a janitor to do that, right? If I identify with the janitor aspect, and then I, get let go and I can't do that anymore, I mean, then I lost myself, right? And that's what I said, depression, suicidal thoughts, and whatnot. And purpose, and it's really interesting because I was refining my statement the other day, right? And a phrase I like to use a lot is shine your light. And I looked at my statement, and mine is used to be, inspire and empower individuals to essentially to grow on this journey to yeah, I mean, inspire and empower people on their journey through life. Essentially, was, let's summarize it because it was a bit longer. But now what I've come to realize is that really what I'm doing for myself, first of all, and then for me, purpose is like, I mean, if you think about it as a forgiving or from that aspect, it really starts at the personal level, and then it expands to everyone else because everyone is the same anyway. But it's like inspire and empower people to shine their light, or not even inspire and empower others to shine their light. And to me, whenever I look at a statement, a purpose statement, I believe it has to start with self. So can you do that for yourself? Can you inspire and empower yourself? In my case, to shine my light. Can I do that? And then it's about giving it to others, right? So there's the giving aspect you mentioned. It's like giving and empowering others to find the same. It's not about saving the world from my point of view, but potentially changing the world. And when I say changing the world, I'm not talking about these big things that I know I'm gonna get people to Mars or whatever, but changing the world in the sense that if, as a result of our conversations together, your world becomes a tiny bit better for you from your perspective, from the form perspective perhaps, and spiritual, then the entire world becomes a bit better, right? Because you get to forgive more, I get to forgive more, and all of a sudden everything else becomes slightly better from whatever definition you want to look at. And I realize that as I'm saying a lot of that, right, like a lot of it is coming from the ego place, but at the same time I see the connection with the spiritual side of things, from spirit, from the mind, like you said, because it is a lot about forgiving. And I've realized that I was really good at not forgiving myself in many things in life, and I'm still unpacking a lot of those layers as I journey and as I meditate. Anyway, I don't know, I said a lot of things there, but that's kind of what comes up for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest piece that came up for me in hearing that was there was a lot of separation, and truly we're just all one. So what you give to your brother is giving to you, and I think that is one thing that I have really learned on this journey that I really really like used to live every day by, was like, fill my cup till it overflow into you. But that's the
Yes, I
ego.
love that.
But that's an ego belief, because that
Is it?
that would insinuate that at some point I'm lacking, and I'm never lacking. I'm wholly abundant 24/7, and so are you. And like, it's an endless tap. So there is no need to ever fill, because there is no lack.
But what
So
what if, okay, let me ask you this, actually, that's not if I may, what if you're not connected to the tap? Because to me it seems like, at least this is how it comes up for me to share. It's like, yes, there is an infinite tap, I agree with you 100%, there's this infinite energy around, but what if you're disconnected from it,
So
and
you
that's
can
where you're.
never be disconnected from it. That's another like misnomer, because that again would insinuate separation. So the only problem is your belief that you can be disconnected from it, your belief that you can lack. And that's where I think the only true thing we have control over is our perception of everything. So when you remove that belief, which ultimately, your beliefs create your thoughts, create your emotions, create your perception, right, which ultimately
Yeah.
started at the desire, at the in the middle. um when you shift your perception and shift your belief so that your perception is shifted, then it just seamlessly, you just remember it was there, right? It's not about learning, it's not about reconnecting, it's not about any of that. It's instead about removing the barriers to the remembrance, to the truth, to the knowingness that it's already all there. So yeah, when we say we need to reconnect, we've immediately said, I believe in the ego belief system. I believe that I can actually be separate from this well of abundance. I actually believe, in lack. It's
mean,
like walls, right? Like you put up all these walls. So the truth is like this chopstick in between, and you've got like a phone wall, and you've got an iPod wall, and you've got all these barriers to truth. And as you pull the walls of the barrier down, the ego goes and hides behind a different barrier. Like I used to play paintball, and if you went to a paintball field, course where they had it set up, it was almost like capture the flag, and they had these like barriers that were big, grain barrels or whatever, or not grain
mhm.
bales, hay bales, and you'd hide behind them. And if someone found you behind one barrier, you'd run to a new barrier, right? Well, that's what the ego does. The ego's the guy on the other team, and you're removing all the hay bales one by one, and until there's none left, and he has nowhere to hide, and all he can do is no longer exist because you took him out. But in the process, like the other day, I had a client,
Yeah.
we found where the ego's hiding now, because the ego used to be hiding behind alcohol, and now the ego's hiding behind the body image. And it's painful. Sometimes it can feel painful, but again, that's your belief that pain can exist. Well, that's a whole nother conversation.
Oh
But
yeah,
the
that's a
second
different.
you find it, then you can allow it to come to the top, like, hey, I see you. And you allow it to rise, and you view it from a place of the observer, from spirit, instead of identifying with it.
Yeah, there's so many directions we can go in that.
Yeah.
I'll say what came up to me is like, I mean, I do believe that we're all part of oneness, right? We're all parts of the same great thing, or one thing. And I can see now your analogy with how the ego puts up these walls, because the visual picture that came up in my mind. So let's say we're in this big giant circle, right? Like we are inside of it. I'll take the cup here, right? Like this is all of us, right? And then in the middle of it, maybe it's this fountain, or this tab that you mentioned, right? Where we're all connected to it because we're all part of the same thing. And I can see then the ego of each of us is the one that's actually stopping the flow, or putting that block in to stop the flow, the connection to that tap. And right, that's creating the idea of separation, which is what you talked about. So perhaps I wonder if it's a different perspective to it, because like I look at my life right now and the journey I'm on, and I look at yours and a lot of other people. It's like we all have some form of separation illusion in our life, between each other, between ourselves and God, universe, spirit, whatever you believe in. And I wonder, is it just the ego placing those barriers, or those cuts the connection, or is it more than that? And I mean, I don't know if anyone knows the answer, but that's kind of what I'm at right now, because I see the separation, and I agree with you. I don't disagree with that. And at the same time, I believe it's caused by something, and that something is our ego or something else. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I think it just always goes back to belief, because for me, I very much used to see the separation until I began to unwind the mind. And the more you unwind, the more remembrance you have that you never were separate. And that the ego is just a belief system, and it only exists due to your belief in it. So the more you unwind the mind, the less and less your belief gets, and the more and more the light begins to shine through, right? The light begins to help you remember, oh, that's right, like, X, Y, and Z. So the ego wants you to believe you can be cut off, right? Because that puts you in a place of fear, that puts you in a place of needing to do things. And I think that's another piece that the course has really taught me, and the course, I'd just like to clarify for anyone listening, A Course in Miracles is not telling you the answers. A Course in Miracles is a mind training to unwind the mind so you can remember your own answers. And I think that's why I love it the most, because like I've been to church, I've done other religions, I've looked into Buddhism and Hinduism and all these different religions, like so many in different ways of spirituality, whether it was you know I don't know. I could go down that road. But anyway, all of them always told me like the answers, I guess, or told me what it was. And the course has really just unwound my mind to remember what is in there, to remember what the truth is, to like actually experience it. And so yeah, the more you unwind the mind, the more you experience. And it's an undeniable feeling of like, I was never separated from this. It was here the entire freaking time. I just believed in the separation.
Which is a disconnect, right? The visual keeps coming back. It's like, you're right, it was always there, I just didn't connect myself to it, or I just didn't accept the connection, and the tap was turned off for me, or like in my direction, right? So I can see this visual in my mind right now, where it's like all these beautiful taps we're connecting to, but we decide which ones we allow to flow through, and some of us may allow none of them, some of us may allow some of them, and then we realize as we go through life and as we go through this process to turn more and more on and just remember who we are.
Yeah.
So if the course, let's talk about that, since you brought the course up quite a bit. I'll be honest, I haven't, I read the Disappearance of the Universe, the book you recommended a while back, but I haven't dove into the course just yet. Yeah. So if purpose is forgiveness, why are we in this illusion to begin with?
For that purpose.
But why? Why is there a need for that if we are everything and everyone and all and love?
So, because like we're not little gods. So I want to make it clear to everyone, if you've ever read Conversations with God, that is not what the course is telling us. It's far from that. We are a thought in God's mind. And then, this goes into a very deep conversation actually, but the gist of it and how like I put it into illusionary vision of it is like, say God is our dad and we're a little kid and God has tons of children, like, 19 kids and counting, like has tons of them. So, but he loves every single child identical, exactly the same. But we're the kid that's like, I want to be loved different. I want to feel a different love. And God physically can't do that. Like he doesn't have the ability. And in that moment, we thought what it would be like to be separate from God and to create our own, to be able to like experience that special love. And we never actually did it, because in that split second of that like thought in our mind, we built up so much shame and guilt of separating from the pure eternal love there is, that we created this world to hide in, to project out our shame and guilt, because it was so painful. So the pain that we experienced got projected into this illusion so that we never actually look at the shame and guilt. So it's not about like healing it. It's about like, we won't even look at it, because the second you look at it, you realize it doesn't actually exist. It's just a belief it exists. So yeah, that's really... Yeah. And it all happened, right? That's why we're reviewing it. It's like as if, The Chosen, I've been waiting forever for season 4 to come out, and it finally came out, but it's been recorded and there's been other people that have watched it, and I haven't been able to watch it yet because I wasn't going to go sit in the theater for 4 hours because I have to pee a lot. And so I've been waiting, but just because I didn't see it doesn't mean the movie hadn't been created. And just because someone else has already saw it doesn't mean that I already knew it, if that makes sense. So the movie's already been recorded. We're just viewing it from the end of it happening, and we all happen to be in different places, because it's not actually Constantin viewing this. It is spirit. Remember that, like the I am presence, right? The one that that is truly within you is what is viewing it. It's just viewing it through the lens of the persona of Ashley. And that's really where, my series on YouTube came from, of Through the Lens. It's a reminder we're all viewing through these lenses,
Yes.
but we're all spirit. So, like, the parable of Ashley is not me. The parable of Constantine is not you. You are spirit. I am spirit. So we are one. It's just like you have the Constantine meat suit on and I have the Ashley meat suit on. And we're reviewing it until we can remember that there was no guilt that existed and then everything ceases to exist. But that ending in time has already occurred. And like, oh my gosh, this conversation goes so, so deep.
Yes, I can
Yeah.
see that. I can see that, Ashley. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we're here for forgiveness. We're here to move through the shame and guilt that got us here in the first place so that we don't ever have to come back to here.
Yeah.
Or believe we're here, because we're not even really here. But again.
Oh my God, this is so beautiful.
And I will say, like, I was telling this to someone the other day. And because so often people are like, oh, these things you have. Oh, I was telling my friend, I hadn't talked to her in a while. And I was just telling her some of these concepts, and she just kind of gave me these eyes. And I said, you know what? One thing I know, and I know for certain, is I have read so many personal development books. I have done so much talk therapy, CBT. I've done the eye movement therapy. I've done all these different types of modalities to heal me so I can be happy. Like, I should have a PhD as a therapist because of the amount of therapy I've taken. And we'll tell you, all of those things have always provided me this like dopamine happiness, false sense of happiness for short periods of time. But the one thing that has actually consistently gotten better over time is practicing the course, is practicing the unwinding of the mind. So at the end of the day, whether it's true or it's not true, I will tell you, it is the one thing that isn't someone else's agenda, isn't asking me to follow people, isn't asking me to pay people money, but is truly saying you contain all of your answers within. Here is the roadmap to remember them.
Yeah.
So as much as people are like, I want to believe this, I want to believe that, I'm like, okay, go believe that. Go do that. Like my friend, she's feeling inspired of like getting rid of all of the things in her house and, really clearing out, which I've done so many times in my life, right? Patrick and I watched a minimalist show from like 2016, a documentary, and I was like, oh yeah, that was a big movement back then. And now we're back to collecting Hermes bags and fancy car, like literally, like we've shifted again, but in a different, it's like, I'm going to have less, but I'm going to have super expensive things of the less, right? Like the best of the best, but less of it. But anyway, I've done this multiple times. So I said to her, I said, you got to clear the mind, right? Only when you clear the mind can you release things like I did my car the other day and truly release it because it's been released from the mind. And she's like, well, I'm going to start there, which again is trying to mess with effect. You're trying to manipulate effect when really you have done nothing for the cause. So eventually the effect will come back. So I said, okay, do it. But come back to me when all of a sudden it starts showing up somewhere else. Or you find yourself in 10 years recollecting everything. Because I promise you, unless you go and clear the mind, that is what will happen. And so that is what the course teaches you, is to fully unwind the mind from all these things that are at the level of form and go back to the true place of content. Bring it back to the one thing that has control, which is the mind. So I don't know why I share that, other than I know a lot of people are like, oh, fuck your course, or, and I'm like, fine, it's not for you. That's okay. But I will tell you, I have never been so freaking happy in my entire life. And it has nothing to do with this illusion and everything to do with where I remember I actually am and where I'm truly like connected to, which is the mind.
So what would you say? So in your case, then the biggest impact in following that and doing your own remembrance and forgiveness, it just brought more calm, more peace to your life, more joy, more fulfillment? Like, what would you say are some of the results you're seeing right now for your own life?
Yeah, so when you look at the level of form, like, yeah, things have changed, but when I say this, like, it doesn't matter to me to me anymore what it looks like at the level of form for the most part. I mean, yes, I get sucked back into the ego, don't get me wrong, otherwise I wouldn't be here anymore. Um, but I truly understand what the meaning of being is. Like, despite what it may look like at the level of form at any given moment in my life, I'm truly internally in this deep sense of calm and peace and just like it just is. Um but everybody wants the form to look different, and I'm here to tell you, like, you can't promise that. And anybody who's promising anything at the level of form, they're lying to you. They're just really good at marketing because essentially, yeah, maybe it impacts at the level of form. Maybe it starts to look at the different levels of form, but you don't truly know what like is the actual direct effect of this or that, because it's all truly just an effect of the one belief. So like, yeah, I don't know how to explain that other than like you can't fuck with the form.
Oh, I love this so much, Ashley.
I know, I'm just like, oh, my friend, you know Evelina, right? Evelina from
Yes.
the Patreon calls. So she said we were going back and forth one day, and it was either her that said it or me, and we just got kind of like joked about like my marketing scheme, which I don't have a marketing scheme, but my marketing scheme could be I will save you hundreds of thousands of dollars on personal development and, you know, retreats and all of this stuff. Because like once you really start to unwind the mind, like you pick up personal development, you're like, this bullshit. Like this, and not like I'm not trying to like talk down to personal development, but you get to this place of like seeing right through it, maybe seeing right through the ego agenda that's connected to it, and see that in fact, like you don't need that. Like it's truly all within, and it's about just remembering. Yeah, we joke about that. It's not about I'll help you make money. I'll just remind you so you don't have to spend all your money.
I love that because, I mean, I'm curious for you to break this down for me. The way I see it with my clients and the people I get to help, and of course, this is always evolving as I remember more. It's not about promise. Well, it might be a bit about promising specific or measuring specific outcomes, but the idea is not that I will take you there, but rather I will empower you to get there. Meaning, like facilitating it so you can remember your own greatness and all everything that you can do. And that's how I'm not sure. Like, I see some resemblance with what you're talking about and what you do, but from a different, maybe from more from form rather than from spirit.
Hmm.
Because I'm also with Avi, you know, as you know, I mean, we both invested significant amounts of money and time and resources into personal development and different courses and different things, and a lot of them or most of them I've been part of, they are only impacting the form. It's like you gotta follow this, you gotta be very strict.
Mm-hmm.
You if you don't do it this way, you're not gonna be successful.
Right.
And I kind of fell prey for that. You know, I built my system based on recommendations from others, but I looked, okay, what are the parts that got me to where I am today? So those are the parts I want to empower others with. But it's not that like you got to follow these to the T to be successful or to find your own answers. More like it's a framework. And the way I see a framework is like you can color outside the box if you want. It's up to you. Like you make it your own. The framework is, hey, take this. This might guide you in a direction. And I feel like the Course in Miracles, the one you talk about, that's a framework, right? More or less, because it's like, hey, if you, it's a guidance, it's an empowerment of sorts. I don't
Mm.
know how you feel about it, but that's kind of how it comes up to me, and I keep, going back in and always revisiting like what I help people with, like what do I actually offer to the world, and it's this idea that I'm here to inspire and empower, nothing more, meaning that it's just guidance for you to remember who you are and how amazing you are.
Yeah.
which then will give you whatever you want at the level of the form, I would imagine.
Yeah. Well, I think the biggest piece to note is like you're always teaching, period. And we, in the illusion, it talks about this in the course. I'd have to try to find the exact spot, but it's in the manual for teachers. But it talks about how we believe teaching is like this significant event that only happens for short periods of time, right? You go to school, you
Yeah.
hire a mentor, blah, blah, blah. But technically, you're always teaching. But the question is, which belief system are you teaching from? And it depends which belief system you're showing up from, right? Are you teaching from a place of fear, or are you teaching from a place of love? And so you're always teaching based on your actions and how you are living. So to me, it's really about, as long as I continue to unwind the mind, the course says it truly only takes one child of God to remember. And so as long as I continue to do my work, meaning unlearning everything. And when you talk about spending bajillions of dollars on personal development, yes. And it's interesting. It was definitely all a part of my journey because I had to go through what I had to go through. But one of the biggest pieces of my journey has been unlearning the tens of thousands of hundreds of thousands of dollars I've spent on personal development, because I see personal development as truly what it states, is person development, which means you as an individual in this illusion. And where I'm talking about is like spirit development, realizing you are not an individual and you are not in this illusion. So everything personal development taught you is exactly the opposite of what's going to get you the hell out of here. Personal development will just make you a better dream. And yes, it is a part of a lot of people's journeys. It was part of mine. But yeah, ultimately.
Now, is it actually though? Is it an all or nothing thing though? Because I know I wouldn't like. I'll put it to me. I know I wouldn't be here having this conversation with you had I not invested in myself in certain areas. And yeah, maybe they gave me 99% of BS that kept me in this illusion, further or whatever, in the ego. But at 1% allowed me to be what I am today, so I can unwind more and more of the mind. So I'm wondering, I don't think it's an all or nothing. Like nothing is really.
No, and like I said, it was all meant to be a part of my journey. Like it expands your horizon, it expands your mind. I think a big piece about like the new age movement helps people realize the power of the mind. I think manifestation, or the belief in it, is that you're realizing the power of the mind, which really sets you up to realize this is all an illusion. I read Holographic Universe back in my personal development days, and that is seen as more of like like understanding the illusion, dissecting the illusion, so at the level of the illusion. But it really helped me to adapt into wrap my mind around these bigger concepts. And I think our journeys are already all laid out, right? So what you had to do, Constantine, to get where you're at is what you had to do. But when I share this is because it's the truth. It's the truth I see now where I'm at, and it kind of makes me chuckle. But I think at first I kind of was like, well, I shouldn't share that truth because personal development was like such a big part of my journey. I was like, but why? Like when you're anybody who's made it somewhere in life always shares the things they learned along the way. It's just people don't like me sharing that personal development is not necessary because we're all doing it. Then that would mean like we're all like doing something we don't have to do. But you're right on your journey where you're meant to be. And I'm meant to share this because there is meant to be some people that will hear this, that will remind them that, oh, that personal development book that I read and I like nothing in my life is going right doesn't mean I'm a shitty human being. It just means it's not meant to be a part of my journey. Right? Because I think personal development for me created a ton of shame and guilt as well. Like I did all the things necessary to manifest, and I manifested like crazy for a period until it didn't work anymore.
Exactly. That's why I feel like any programs you join, any programs you go in has to have an element of helping you release shame and guilt, forgive, right? Like that, the forgiveness aspect, like to empower you to find that within yourself.
Yeah. But
that's what I feel you do with the people you work with, right? And I mean, I get to attend your calls every month for the Patreon, and I feel that's where you excel at. You provide that perspective and the space for people to find their own answers,
Mm-hmm.
while you provide perhaps different perspectives. And at the end of the day, it's everyone's choice to pick and choose what they want to believe in. And if
Yeah.
they feel I want to give you like 1,000% credit for this one with the prickle phrase you like to use. And until you drew my attention to that aspect of it, I was not as open minded as I thought I would be in
Yeah.
the moment, right? Because it's so easy to dismiss something when it upsets you, even
Hmm.
like at the subconscious level. You're like, yeah, no, this is BS. I'm going to turn off. And
But
that's
that's
okay.
what got us here.
Yes. And it's
Like it was
that's why.
so uncomfortable, we projected it out. And like whether it's through creating stuff or, creating an illusion, the appearance of it, or it's projecting it out, meaning blaming someone. Like when you feel uncomfortable, and instead of like, oh, what is this? Bring it back to the mind, because that person is just a projection of the mind. But if we instead say, oh, that's because Ashley's crazy, it does nothing for you. It keeps you stuck. It keeps you in that state of, I'm going to project out. 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 And that, I mean, if that's where you're at, that's fine. But I'll tell you, like, it's not going to get any better.
Yeah, and this is something I was just working with a client the other day, and we're talking about something similar where if something appears in your life and shows up and you're all of a sudden you feel something towards it, like in this case you're like, okay, well, I met Ashley, it's like, wow, she's a crazy person, right? And then I walk away and then I forget about you, right?
Mhm.
That means, in my opinion, you missed an opportunity to reflect on something that's within you, to find forgiveness for a part of you. Like, where does that show up in your life right
Mhm.
now, where you see a part of you and it's like, oh my god, that part is freaking crazy or ugly or stupid or whatever, and you walk away from it,
Mhm.
right? Because, and I'm curious, I mean, I know we're pretty much at time here, but what's your idea around, not idea, but your thoughts around the concept of mirroring, of like everything that shows up in our environment and everything that we interact with, it's essentially a mirror for what
Yeah.
we get to release guilt, shame from, to forgive, to embrace and grow.
Yeah, so mirror mirror has been like my concept since the beginning of really any of my deeper work after my divorce, and really realizing that anything that upsets me has nothing to do with them and has everything to do with me.
Yes.
And then as I've like gone on this journey of unwinding the mind and having a deeper understanding, which I will say is really cool, because some of my deepest work I did before I came across the Course in Miracles, when I now am introduced to the Course in Miracles, I'm like, shit, that's what I was doing. I just didn't have those words. I didn't have those understanding of that's exactly what I was doing. So it's really beautiful. I just finally found words and like a common understanding for what I've been doing for the last like 5 years with myself and clients. But essentially mirroring is always, it's been the thing, it is the thing
Yeah.
that everyone is a project. And now like unwinding the mind, it's like everyone is a projection of the mind. So the mirror before just held like this reflection for me, and now it's like this deeper embodiment of like, when I see Constantine, he is a witness for what is going on in the mind. And I know so often, I want to stress this. If you are listening, please listen in very deeply right now, because we miss this so much, because the personal development world has taught us to focus on the negative. So often we only see people as mirrors when they piss us off or they prickle us, or some emotion that isn't
Yes.
favorable. And Evelina, I love you if you listen to this, because she always, after we get off a beautiful call and it's been so expansive and heart opening, she always will send me this message about, Ashley, you're so beautiful, I'm so grateful for you, like the things you say, the way you show up, like just like go like it's like a love fest, right? And I always respond back to her and I'm like, I am just a reflection of your own mind. That is you, girl. Because that is what it is. We are all here to be witnesses. So the more people that show up in your life that bring you joy and love and happiness is a reminder of the mind healing, right? And the more pain that shows up is a reminder of opportunities to bring it back to the mind and to release it.
Yes.
So, but I mean, we focus so much on the negative, like this shadow work BS that people do. I shouldn't say that. I take that back. But I feel like what has happened is that we've put so much weight on this shadow work and how you need to bring awareness to the negative behaviors operating in your life. And then we leave no one with a solution, with an opportunity. Like there's a girl I know that she bought this shadow work journal and she is just in the darkest place ever because that shadow work journal just has her every single day looking at the crappy things, the crappy mirrors, the crappy
Yes, yes,
behaviors,
yes.
but there's no like, then what? So she gets on this call with me and she's like, I'm very aware of all how crappy of a person I am and all these crappy things, but then what? And it's like, oh my, like to me, don't do any work then. You are better where you are at because you will drive yourself into such a deep, dark space if all you are constantly focusing on is bringing awareness to the darkness. You
Exactly. It's what you
cannot.
focus on is what comes into your life.
Exactly. And
Easy.
you can't bring light to the darkness. I feel like shadow work often is misrepresented as this opportunity to bring your light and shine it into the darkness. You can't. You have to allow the darkness to bubble up into the light and the light will dispel it. You do not expect that you are bringing your flashlight over into that darkness. You can look under the bed, but you must first turn on that light.
I'm smiling here so much, Ashley, because this is such a great place to kind of wrap it up. Because oh my god, and you remind me of something that I so easily forget these days. The idea that when you're thinking of the mirror, right, it's so easy to be like, oh, like you said, that the shadow stuff. It's like, oh, this is a mirror for me to go do some work on the negative stuff.
Yeah.
But you don't pay attention to the positive things.
Mm.
And literally, this was just me. And it got, like, as soon as you're talking, I was like, got the biggest grin on my face because I'm like, ah, shit, I know what she's talking about now. That's about me.
Called you out.
And like, for example, I recorded a bunch of episodes for the podcast, and I met some amazing people in the last week and a half. And people, more than a few, kept telling me that, hey, Constantine, this was such an amazing conversation. You're such an inspiring person, and your story is inspiring and empowering, blah blah blah. And I would grin. I'll be like, oh, that's cool, and that's it. And now I realize, wait a second, that's just a mirror of how I feel on the inside as well, and how I'm showing up, because I've been, battling my own shadow word, let's say, or demons, I wanted to say. And I was like, oh, I didn't feel that way, or I didn't. And now I'm like, you just reminded me to look at it a bit differently, and look at all sides, not just the stuff that prickles me. Look at all of it and acknowledge the beauty that you're putting out into the world.
Right. Like my favorite video.
That's thank you for that. That was such a beautiful reminder, and amazing.
Yeah, because it's not like that video I did where do people actually change, or is it our perception of them? If you're not paying attention to the positives, then that video will never make sense to you.
Yeah. And speaking of that, tell people where they can find that stuff, Ashley, where they can find you.
Yeah, you can find me right here, Big Miracle Energy YouTube, bigmiracleenergy.com. We do a live Patreon call twice a month, the first and third Sunday at the same exact time that Constantin and I go live, but one last week. So the first Sunday of the month is private, and we just get to jam out with Patreon. And then the third Sunday is broadcast live here on YouTube for you all to tune in. But we would love for you to join us in person. Like Constantin said, my goal for that in creating that was to have a safe space to just share my curiosity, because people are always like, you questioned what? I'm like, yeah, like, why wouldn't you? And so it's really just giving others permission to get curious as well. And as you can see, like, we don't all agree, and we don't have to. That's the beauty of it.
Find your own answers, right? Find your own remembrance.
Yeah. And that's at Big Miracle Energy Patreon. And that's the $33 a month right-minded thinker. And we would love to see you there. Oh, crap. Is that next week already? Yes.
Yeah,
next Sunday. We'll be live here.
Awesome,
How about
Ashley.
you,
And
Constantine? I feel like you have so much cooking these days. Like, is your
I do,
coaching open? Can people hire you now?
yes, it's out of beta. It's been very successful. So now, yes, they can hire me. Reach out to me through either my podcast, Unleash Thyself, or LinkedIn, Constantin Bomaroon. And those events actually that we've been building, the next iteration of it is coming up in July, I believe. We'll have more details on the dates, but that's calmsuccesslive.com. And it's all about what Ash and I are doing here, sharing what we know, providing a different perspective, and allowing you to make what you want with it. And in those live events, in those 4-hour masterclasses, what I do is I take what I call my system. It's something that I've implemented in my life to get to what I am today. I share those parts. And again, like what I see the most success in people is they take what resonates, they change that framework to fit their needs, however they want to change it, and then they can go. They can take it as is, and they'll see a lot of impact in their life. But truly, to Ash's entire point, I think, not entire point, like a big point in this conversation, it's about finding your own answers, finding your own remembers. And then what we can do the best is to guide you, um, provide perspectives, empower you, right? Like, and to steal your quote, Ashley, we're just walking each other home, right? So, like, in me helping you, you're helping me, and vice versa, right? Like, it's beautiful. So that's it, Ashley, and that's it,
Well, it's
audience.
Ram Dass's quote, P.S. Constantine. Like,
Yes, it's Ramdas, but we can give it to Ashley now.
yeah.
I always think of you when I think of that quote.
Yeah, I love that quote. Because really, we're just
Awesome.
one, but whatever. Okay, yay. Thank you, everyone,
Peace
for
out,
tuning
everyone.
in. Thank you, Constantine. Oh, if anybody ever has any suggestions for topics, Constantine and I are completely open. So just share in the comments. We do check them. And just, yeah, remember, we're all just walking each other home.